This episode of the Oh No 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 podcast is sponsored by Dynamic Industrial Services, the rope access specialists. The roof of the South Stand at Starch Park is some 19 metres above the pitch, the same height as 11 Aidan Connolly's. But as we all know, there's only one Aidan Connolly, and so you'd be much better off with Dynamic Industrial Services. DIS specialise in working at height, offering a range of services including maintenance, inspection and repair. To find out more, visit dynamicindustrialservices.co.uk.
Hello and welcome back to the Oh No 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 podcast, where tonight we get the unenviable task of doing the job that nobody wants to do, which is after running riot in the derbies last season, Rovers fell to a 2-0 defeat on Friday night live on BBC against Dunfermline. I am, rather unfortunately, very unenthusiastically your host, Robbie Weir, and tonight I'm joined by Callum Blythe. You got the Bella Ciao going on full blast there, Callum?
Well, like my bed most of the time, Friday night was a bit of a mess, wasn't it?
Aye. Yes, but we'll go into that, I suppose, in a bit further detail. Leslie, how are you doing?
So, well, what's the phrase we like to use, Thomas? Fickle! That's the phrase we use. Football fans are fickle, aren't they? 1 week you can be flying, the next season you're getting absolutely pumped.
Ah, dear. I mean, you're not wrong, but I think that there's areas for criticism there, and I'm sure we'll go through them. And then, fortunately, all the way over for her sake in Barcelona, not making it in person for once for that one. Carol, how are you doing, Carol?
All right. I mean, I don't know what it was like in person, but it was not pretty to watch on the TV.
Carol, we were just talking off air just before we came on about how bottles of schnapps and cheap spirits in Barcelona that I once when I was on holiday there. Friday night, frankly, had me reaching for the Glens vodka. It was just a very despairing affair. Rovers lined up with a 3-5-2 again. Kevin Dabrowski in goals, back three of Liam Dick, Paul Hanlon, and a returning Ewan Murray. Josh Millen slipped into the right wing back position, replacing Lewis Gibson, who obviously came out in place of Murray. Lewis Stevenson on the left side. A midfield of Sean Byrne, Dylan Easton, and Ross Matthews, with Smith and Jamieson up top. I'll just start with yourself, Leslie. Do you think it was the right decision to stick with the five at the back for this game?
In hindsight, you can see why we did it. And I mean, I think we'll come on and talk a lot more about the right-back situation later, but one has to assume that Kieran Freeman is still not 100%. And I think you guys chatted about it on the pre-match. If Ewan Murray is fit and up for it, and you've got Liam Dick, Paul Hanlon and Ewan Murray available, you can see the logic in putting them in a back three. I was a little bit maybe surprised to see Gibson dropping out and to see what kind of Mullen in that right back slot. Whether the thinking was that potentially you're just bringing in a bit more experience, and Ewan Murray probably have been up for it. And I think like Blair had said last week, there's also the argument of when you've got players that are low on confidence, at least trying to stick with the same formation. Mm-hmm. I could see the logic. I think what I was a little bit more enthused about was seeing Jack Hamilton on the bench and kind of hopefully him getting back to full fitness. But no, I think I was maybe a bit surprised, but I could certainly see what Collins was thinking about there.
Yeah, I mean, as we say, Ewan Murray does come straight in to the squad there right from the start. Callum, were you quite happy to see that, given the sort of centre-back woes that we'd had going into the game before?
It's like with the three at the back. It's like it worked well for the first half against Ayr, and that was with only two players who are actually recognised as being centre backs. So having that third centre back in, it's like seeing that. It's like, oh, that's pleasing. That brings a bit of hope, doesn't it? it clearly didn't.
Well,
we get
it's,
into it.
we'll continue on in our chronological order for this. Carol, just to come to you next. Ewan Murray obviously takes the place of Lewis Gibson. Lewis Gibson put in a really impressive performance away at Ayr, had a big part in us getting those 2 goals. Do you think that was quite harsh from maybe Lewis Gibson's perspective to drop out, given his performance against Ayr United? Or do you think that Neil Collins, I know that he'd spoken in his post-match about having the experience there of Josh Mullen. Do you think it was the right call to do?
With the size of the game, that was experience was going to always win. I did think it was maybe a little bit harsh, but I think you discussed it on the pre-match. It's like, what choices does he have? I mean, the lineup that we got, what other options could we do? We could maybe change some players around, but the lineup and the positioning is going to be the same, because we are weak in some points, definitely weak in some points, and I don't think Mullen would be any weaker than Gibson or vice versa. I just think that experience, Mullen's got that little bit more match experience and a little bit more occasion experience. I mean,
yeah, it was actually. They were right in front of me, actually, just down the stand, about 4 or 5 rows down. But Lewis Gibson's extended family had made the trip up like great aunties and things like that, which was really nice to see. Obviously supporting him. The main other player that was omitted from the squad just through injury, and again it sort of delved into the conspiracy theories until a certain Mr. Philpy came along and completely dispelled them, thanks to his visit to IKEA, apparently, according to Pine Bovril. It was Sam Stanton obviously drops out due to injury, so that was obviously a huge loss going into the game, and it's really unfortunate to hear. Hopefully, again, wish him all the best in coming back from injury, because never nice to hear that sort of situation. So the game opens. Rovers really struggled in terms of high press. Chris Kane in particular coming the closest earlier on with a header just after we failed to sort of deal with a ball out wide. Leslie, what were your thoughts on that? Do you think it was quite systemic, or was it just more Rovers struggling to get into grips with the occasion?
My immediate thought was, oh, Jesus Christ. It was an absolute bin fire from the get-go. We were all over the place. I think one thing that, we've laughed at James McPeak, but one thing you absolutely cannot criticise James McPeak for is he is absolutely fucking brilliant at getting his players fired up. We've seen him do that in the past with other teams as well. If there's a big game, he is incredibly good at getting them fired up, and Dunfermline were extremely fired up for it. They came out of the blocks, and you could clearly see they were well up for it. We made it easy for them. There was absolute chaos, and we weren't stringing more than 1 or 2 passes together. And you could see, they were starting to get chances. They were getting closer. We were doing absolutely nothing of any consequence. I think also what struck me from immediately right away was the difference in physicality between the teams. So somebody had said this on Twitter. I can't remember who it is. So whoever you are, thanks very much. It was a great insight. It was like watching a team of juniors at some points. It was like, watching a junior team or a B team, because we were just getting battered off everything. Mm-hmm. And then you had this repeating pattern. Now, there's another bit of the repeating pattern that I'll leave for somebody else to talk about, or I'll talk about later. But ball goes out. Kev takes a goal kick. Everybody gathers in a crowd. The ball goes into the crowd. It bounces off somebody's head. It comes flying back down towards our goal. It goes past the post, over the bar, or whatever. Rinse and repeat. And, we've moaned at people before for saying that kind of Einstein madness and doing the same thing again quote, but this really was like that. So a very, very, very disorganised start. Absolute deer in headlights stuff from us. Not more than 1 or 2 passes going together at a time, gifting them chances all over the place. And it looked like it was only a matter of time before a goal was coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, one occasion, 15 minutes in, really the moment that sort of nobody wants to see when you're 15 minutes in, again, particularly given the form that we're in. Ball over the top, where Chris Kane manages to get past both Ewan Murray and Paul Hanlon, and then it's just down in a wreck, and straight away the referee's looking for his cards. Dunfermline players obviously very, very keen to press home, crowd around the referee, and argue their case. Carol, what was your perspective on it? What did you make of it? Did you think, firstly, in the first place, was it a foul? Was it a yellow card? Was it a red card? What would you be taking from it?
My first Rovers coloured glasses look was that he tripped and fell, and he used his back to support him going down. But looking back, it was 2 hands on his back, and it looked like a shove, and there's not really a lot you can do about it. But I do think that Scottish football needs to bring in the rule of only the captain can speak to the ref, because the ref is just getting surrounded by the players. And it's got to influence them. It's got to have some sort of effect on them. And I think that needs to stop. It needs to be only the captain can speak. And if anyone backs chats, they get a card. So there is a consequence to it, because it is getting ridiculous. In other, like in the English league and the Spanish league, you're starting to see multiple players like step back and only the captain come up. I think that needs to come into Scottish football.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's got to be a degree of sort of strength from the referee's point of view as well, and to sort of say and get control of that situation very quickly. It can obviously have an influence, but if you can't do it, then any team, you're going to ask your team to do it. So I think that's the main thing. And I'm sure if Rovers were in that position against them, then you would hope it would be the case that we are straight on like asking the question. I mean, even when you think back to the red card that Partick Thistle had against us, it was a clear red card, but we were straight over and we had multiple players like, that's the one. So again, it's very, very difficult one. Callum, just you were obviously at the game in the stand. What was your sort of perspective on it, and sort of how much of an influence do you think that had, and just where were you at that moment? And no one-word answers. I'm not allowing you that one-word answer that you love to do.
Ewan Murray, you fucking idiot. That was my immediate reaction. Just seeing that, I was sort of like, immediate, just head in hands. It's just like, we're 15 minutes in and we're down to 10 minutes. Fucked already. It's like, having seen that first 50 minutes of Dunfermline being pretty much all over us, and then that happening, it's like, oh, fuck. This is not going well. This is going to be a long one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it proved to be.
Yeah, that was I think that was a feeling among the stand. It was just kind of like, that's just absolutely typical of where we're at the moment on the pitch. And again, we'll talk about sort of the sort of discrepancies between sort of what's happening on the pitch and what's happening off the pitch coming a bit later on in the podcast. But yeah, just a very, very rough one to take, given the circumstances. So that's us. We'll come back to that in a bit later on. Really, other than that, very, very slim pickings. Callum Smith tries his best as a lone forward, but it's going to always be a tough task in that first half. There was one incident where Sean Byrne got the ball at the edge of the box, and rather than taking a shot, he just clips it for Callum Smith. So, Leslie, I can see you laughing away about that. Quite frustrating as a fan to watch. You just want a player to maybe have a go in effort and test the Dunfermline keeper.
Absolutely.
When you go.
It absolutely is. And, I was sitting there in the stand and I was tapping square. I almost had the controller in my hands. I was tapping square, which is what you would do. It doesn't matter who it is from that position. You would shoot, but then he goes one way, then he goes another way. You think, is he going to try and find himself more space? No, he's looking for a ball. Duncan put a magnificent comment in our group chat during the game, which I think is worth just kind of reading out and acknowledging. He said, has Sean Byrne got some kind of weird pact with the devil or some curse or something like that? Yes, you can be a professional footballer, but if you ever shoot, your head will explode. Or words to that effect. And that's what it felt like. I mean, he got himself into a fantastic position, Sean Byrne. And it's one of those ones, even if it had gone sailing over the bar or wide of the post, you could have forgiven him for having had a go from that range. But again, it's one of those things, and I think we will probably come on to talk about it in the second half. Nobody seems to want to be the person who sticks their head above the parapet and takes the fall for doing something wrong. So, he's looking for a ball. He's looking to try and play it in front of Callum Smith when ordinarily players who are high on confidence, you'd think you have a go and okay, you've actually had a go. But I mean, I think just to be fair actually to the team, we actually did look a bit better after we went down to 10 men. Somehow we looked a bit more organised. We were trying to make things happen. Josh Mullen was having a bit of success down the right, and Sean Byrne got himself into a good position. And Callum Smith, as always, was working his socks off to just try and make things stick. So, yeah, it was an exceedingly frustrating first half. But weirdly enough, we did look a wee bit better between the red card and the break somehow.
Yeah. So I've got a few points to make about that, Leslie. Firstly, I think that, can you remember a few years ago when Tony Hibbert was very much in his twilight years at Everton? And they played a pre-season friendly. I can't remember who it was, but they'd always sort of spoken about if Hibbert scores, we're on the pitch or we riot. And that's pretty much the territory that we're at. When Sean Byrne scores, I might well be on the pitch because it'll be a glorious occasion. But
see, with the
We score
position
from open play in the next few games, we'll riot
Yeah.
and be on the pitch with happiness.
yeah, I mean that might be true. That might be very true.
See,
Alan's
with
the
the
expert
position-
in the room.
Yeah, it's like, see with the position that Sean Byrne was in, it's like having had like my Twitter feed for like the past week and a half filled with Barclays men edits, where you just got random midfielders just hitting thunder cunts from like 30 yards. It's just like, please just shoot. It's like, it's infused my brain. Just shoot from 30 yards.
Yeah. Just to come back to another point that Leslie made, though, Carol, do you think it was sort of the change moving towards a back four? Do you think that helped us? Because that's going to be a more familiar position that we've played sort of more often, sort of with the sort of where we're at, albeit
Yeah.
two of the players are going to be out of position, but in terms of Dicko's not really a centre back, but he does well there. And then on top of that, you've also got Josh Mullen moving in at right back, where again we're going to come on to that topic a bit later on. But yeah, what were your thoughts about that?
It's a strange thing. I thought we looked more comfortable when we went down to 10 men. We certainly looked like we were more comfortable. We knew what we were doing. I picked up on Neil Collins' post-match interview. He says, obviously, this is not a scenario that we planned for. I've only been here for 10 days. We've not run through the scenario. If we get someone sent off in 10 minutes, this happens. But we did seem to know what to do in that situation. And there was a period where I'm like, Dunfermline don't look like they've got the extra man. They're not taking advantage. We are surviving. We are definitely much like treading water in your primary school swim classes with your jammies round your neck surviving. But yeah, we did feel a little bit more comfortable. And going into half time, you're like, we could maybe get a draw out of this. We could maybe drag this out, sit back, don't let them attack us, and we'll be fine.
Yeah, so Dunfermline, again, you've got to say they were, sort of to a degree, they were ramping up the pressure, but not really capitalising. Callum, 0-0 at half-time, just your thoughts at that point in the game, and sort of, did you really have any optimism? Were you still sort of holding out, just that we might be able to do something in the second half, maybe a sucker punch, or where were you at?
My optimism was basically, it's like, we seem to have settled into the game a bit, and I know we made a bunch of comments about this in the pre-match, but it's like Dunfermline had a very poor scoring record, so it's like probably the best we can get is a 0-0, and at that point, it's like you're down to 10 men for well over 70 minutes of 75 minutes of the game. It's like, if it was to finish 0-0, which looked the most likely at that point, then we'd absolutely take that, because it's like we didn't really look like scoring. We didn't look like doing much going forward. We wouldn't quite get into the final third, and even if we did, they'd be like one person, and there was just a bit of nothingness. So that's how it was really for me.
Yeah, I think that for me, I thought it was really, really sort of tough to see where we would get the opportunities coming from, particularly because we've not had much in the way of luck in front of goals, other than that maybe Challenge Cup game against Ayr. We were sort of looking a bit more aggressive. Even then, when you're down to 10 men, I just felt like some games you dictate and you see some, for instance, Ayr United when they came to Starks Park last season in the first game, where they went down to 10 men, but they still dominated the game, if we're being completely honest in that one. And it took a last-gasp Lewis Vaughan goal to get an equaliser there. That wasn't one of those games for us last night. I think that the occasion seemed to be very much overwhelming, and the fact that we're down to 10 men felt like we were really struggling, and Dunfermline, they smelt blood, particularly given how much we owned that derby last season. Yeah, very, very difficult. And that was obviously the start of the second half. There was a half-time substitution for Rovers where Lewis Vaughan came on for Callum Smith at half-time. Leslie, did you think that was the right move? Callum Smith coming off, he'd obviously put in a very, very workmanlike shift in the first half, but to bring Lewis Vaughan on, would that maybe offer another dimension, or where were you at with that one?
I thought it was harsh on Callum Smith because he had worked his socks off, and and he doesn't really show much sign of tiring. I did think it was harsh, but at the same time, when you're down to 10 men and you're wanting to put an attacker on with Vaughan's quality, somebody has got to come off. And whether the thinking was that Jameson could offer something a bit different with, we know how good he is with the ball at his feet and some of the touches he has, whether they're thinking was it keeping Jameson on would allow us to have that, and that Vaughan was effectively giving us Callum Smith plus a wee bit more quality and a wee bit more danger in the box. As I say, it seemed a bit harsh that Callum Smith had to be the fall guy for that. But again, you can absolutely see why you would want to bring Lewis Vaughan on. The fact he didn't start, again, kind of suggests he's still not 100%. But, you bring him on, like we've said before, he's Mr. Wraith Rovers. He comes on, he'll give the stand a lift, he gives the crowd a lift. He comes on and you kind of hope that he's going to make something happen, especially against a team like Dunfermline. So as I say, I think it would have been harsh on whichever of Smith or Jameson came off. My gut instinct is I might have taken Jameson off, just because, not really through any fault of his own. I don't think he was offering us a great deal. But again, for either of those guys, it would have been harsh for one of them to be hooked at half-time, and it's not something you would have expected if we'd had 11 men.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the circumstances must have dictated with that one, really. And I do feel it was harsh on Callum Smith, because I think that for someone that's not a target man, that's not maybe the most physically imposing, he still did a really good job of causing issues, and he was winning a lot of the balls, but just, again, it's one of those ones where I think Rovers were lacking in their confidence for going forward, maybe a lack of options in terms of who you can actually play the ball to. And really, we got punished almost very quickly into the second half. A long ball gets played into the corner where it's sort of Josh Mullen puts it out after being sort of put under pressure by Weatherspoon. It's a short corner from Weatherspoon to Richie Hosler, who then plays it back to Weatherspoon, finds Ewan Otto at the edge of the box, and there's a huge deflection off Paul Hanlon to send that sailing past Kevin Dabrowski. Carol, do you think that summed our night up? That was where we were at, 10 men, and a huge deflection takes it past Dabrowski into the net?
Yeah, it was just a sucker punch. You saw it as soon as he hits it, you're like, that's Kev's going to get that, and then that deflection was just like, we're done, and you could feel the players through the TV, but just everything just dropped. It was like, how do we come back from this? You've got Louis Vaughan on the pitch, but you can't get the ball to him because they're just, like Leslie said earlier, they just look physically bigger than us, physically better than us. Last season, I think it's definitely the first half of the season, we were faster, smarter, and fitter. We might not have been bigger than teams, but we could whip round them. It's like little hobbits running under the legs of Ents was what was happening. But yesterday, it was just, we were getting crushed. No, Friday, sorry. We were getting crushed.
Yeah. And Leslie, 73rd minute, everyone loves a derby sushi, don't they? So Lewis McCann goes down under I think it was Lewis Vaughan and Dylan Easton, or maybe Sean Byrne, I'm not too sure. And then there's 3 bookings for Rovers and 2 for Dunfermline. So obviously there's a bit of drama there, but what did you make of that?
Oh my goodness. Right. I'm going to be honest here. I don't have great eyesight, especially out of my my left eye. And so that's the side where the Rami happened compared to where I was sitting in the stand. So all I saw was like somebody going flying and then players piling in. I couldn't see what had happened. The young chap next to me very kindly explained to me that 3 Dunfermline boys had shoved Sean Byrne into the dugout. So kind of a sign of getting old, I've got a young guy next to me who has to kind of tell me what's going on as I advance in my years. So thank you, whoever you are, for clarifying that for me. But it's one of those things. There's only one way that a Rami like that is going to end, which is that unless the referee or a linesman has seen a punch being thrown or has heard some discriminatory language, everybody involved gets a yellow card. That's all that happens every single time. Unless, as I say, unless something very obvious has happened, it dissipates, and everybody that was involved gets pulled over, and everybody gets a yellow card. And so it was. Things like that can go 2 ways. Sometimes I quite like to see that. It gets people going. Something like that, it can get a team fired up. It can get everybody going.
Sliding into Sunday.
Exactly, sliding into Sunday, which was a good example of that. Sometimes when things aren't going your way, though, you're like, this is just stupid. This is just symptomatic of heeds gone behaviour. at the time, I was leaning more towards the latter of the two descriptions. It looked like just a heat's gone from all those involved. But you can, as I say, you can read it different ways depending on where you're sitting and what you see. But yeah, just symptomatic of everything. If everybody goes firing in, if the whole thing dissipates, all those involved get yellow cards. The only thing I will say is we have a small squad. We're already struggling in key positions. We had Ross Millen missing for games last season, where I think one, if that, of his yellow cards had been from actually doing his duties as a defender. So, rammying is great in the heat of the moment. It can get people fired up. It can come back and bite you on the bum further down the line, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Rovers did bring the changes. They brought on Lewis Gibson for Lewis Jamieson. Jack Hamilton came on for Josh Mullen as well, which put Ross Matthews at right back. And then, unfortunately, a minute later, Callum, just talk us through that second goal and just your thoughts on it. Again, no one-word answers, because I can tell you're itching to provide one right now.
No, I was in the perfect position to see what was happening. So, of course, it's like, okay, Ross Matthews is going at right back. Why is the entire right side empty? There was no one there when it was Wotherspoon who got the ball, wasn't it? It was Wotherspoon who got the ball.
Yeah.
It was just acres. It was like the entire third of the pitch was just empty. There was no one there. And it's just like, whose job is that meant to be? Even with 10 men, you can't be doing that. If it's like a mile up the pitch, like in their half, and they've got... I understand having empty spaces in the midfield or up front, but it's like at defence, it's like you want to be like defensively solid, you want to not quite shot, but it's like you don't want to you want to keep yourself in the game at least somewhat, and it's just leaving that size of a gap was just awful to see. And it's like the moment Wotherspoon got the ball there, I'm just sat there thinking, oh fuck, this is two, isn't it? This is two.
Mm-hmm.
Cuts inside and hits it top bends, and it's like, fair play to him, really, really good finish, but he should have never been in that position in the first place. It was shambolic.
Yeah, just that.
See, I was just going to say, see what it reminds me of was Logan Chalmers' goal for Ayr against us last season, that 4-4 game. But one of those ones from a very similar position, a very similar situation, where you think that is a really good shot, a really good finish, but he should never have had the time and space to be able to get it off. And, David Wotherspoon, like Logan Chalmers even more, is just somebody of that quality should never be allowed that amount of time and space to get that shot away.
That was a real issue last season. Like, the amount of times where we were seeing it, it's just like, that's a really good finish, but we should have never given him the time or whatever. It was an endemic issue last season, and I cannot believe that this is starting to happen again.
I think there's...
you could say the same for the first goal as well. Sorry, Robbie, I'll let you go in a second. You could say exactly the same for the first goal too. I've got a bee in my bonnet about shots from outside the box. Shots from outside the box look great. Everybody loves to see a screamer. Everybody loves the Barclays men screamers. But you can ask, why is a player being allowed to get a shot away? And you could say the same thing about Ewan Otto. He was in acres of space. He had so much time to get that shot away. Why was he not closed down?
Well, I think that's a question that he very much needs to sit with Neil Collins, and we'll go to his. Obviously, the game peters out from there from a Rovers perspective. The stands empty very, very quickly, and there goes a Derby record that was looked so impressive before. Really after last season. So, very disappointing at how that ended. Carol, to go back to Neil Collins' interview, you obviously mentioned it earlier on, there was quite a lot of focus in terms of us having 10 men, a positive attitude, having to take our medicine. Do you find that was quite hard to agree with, listening to it, given the sort of way that things panned out, and that sort of what was really, let's not beat about the bush here, from a Rovers point of view as a fan, you're probably thinking that's a very, very lacklustre performance in a derby given the circumstances.
Yeah, you're not expecting the manager to be coming out raging and moaning about his players in the interview, but I wasn't angry at the team. I don't get angry at the team. I was just so disappointed that the 20 minutes that we had at Ayr, that was a little bit of glimmer of hope, none of that transferred on Friday night. From kick-off, heads were down, shoulders were down. Nobody seemed to be moving well. Dylan Easton of the Dundee United game last season before Christmas and the Dylan Easton now are night and day.
Even the Dylan Easton last week, I thought Dylan Easton was really, really good last week. compared to Friday night, I thought I can't shy away from it. Just nothing came off for him. And I know that that's a lot of Dylan Easton's game. A lot of his games by numbers is very much, I think he's got one of the highest percentages in terms of beating players with the ball, but it just felt like he wasn't really doing anything like that on Friday night. He was losing the ball consistently. It was going out of play. Just nothing was going for him. It's just unfortunate the way that the game worked out. But yeah.
Yeah. And I think that I was expecting Neil Collins' interview to be like that because he's been in the job for 10 days. He can't come out and say anything negative, and he has to be positive and upbeat because he is meant to be the saviour. It couldn't get any worse with Ian Murray, so that's why we got rid of him. It was a bad run for him. We are now on manager 3, 7 games into the season, and nothing's changed. And I think that's what's frustrating. Not anger, it's frustrating is that nothing's changed. We've changed managers, which I think, but on the pitch, there's no pizzazz, to steal Blair's word. There's nothing there. There's no gumption. There's no
bubble.
Energy. There's definitely no bubbles. Maybe if there was bubbles, maybe if we blew bubbles for the side for them to chase,
well, no, West
it would
Ham.
make. I love West Ham. West Ham top in the corner there.
It's no for me. I do not have an English team. For me, English teams are a no-go. You've got your Scottish team and that's it. But I'm
well, mine's is family related. My granddad grew up next to Upton Park, so I had no choice. Yeah.
Each to their own. That's how we'll leave it, Carol. I'll be diplomatic. Leslie, just to carry on with sort of the point that Carol was making there, do you think there's a fear in the squad because of the way that it looked to me on Friday was that a lot of players, and I'm not going to single out or name individuals, but that there was a lot of players that were more afraid to be the person that was maybe making a mistake, and that there was a lack of sort of collective responsibility within the team as to sort of, it felt like a lot of the time the ball was flying out. We maybe weren't taking chances. We weren't taking opportunities in terms of, not so much shots, but more in terms of opportunities to maybe build the play up, to move forward with the ball, to maybe play an aggressive pass. We would maybe turn and play it backwards. What was your perspective sort of from the stands?
I think a lot of this was summed up, and again, likewise, I'm not one for singling players out for criticism, but a lot of things that went badly, especially in the first half, started with Lewis Stevenson. So we had this thing that happened. Lewis Stevenson would get the ball, and 9 times out of 10, he would then make a sideways pass to Sean Byrne, who would then pass it slightly backwards to Paul Hanlon, who would then pass it back to Big Kev to then launch it forwards for it to inevitably find a Dunfermline head and come straight back down to us. And this happened a good 10, 15 times. And it's one of those things where it almost kind of is symptomatic of a lack of confidence to just either, and a few times, to be fair to Lewis Stevenson, he did send it down the line. Callum Smith sometimes chased it, and Dylan Easton sometimes got something out of it. But all too often it was then going to Sean Byrne, it was then going to Paul Hanlon, it was then going back to the keeper. It reminded me of the last John McGlynn season, where we would spend huge portions of game with the ball being shuttled between Jamie McDonald, Kyle Benedictus, Christoph Berra, Liam Dick, and across between those 4 without getting somewhere. And it's just symptomatic of a kind of deep and endemic lack of confidence. Having said that, though, and I don't want to put all the criticism on the guys in defence, there was very few options for them to actually get the ball forwards. So there's no Sam Stanton, there's no Scott Brown. Ross Matthews is engaged in defender leadership, he's sitting deeper. You've got Sean Byrne and Ross Matthews, and then you've got a big hole, and Lewis Jameson and Callum Smith scuttling about up top, trying to make something stick. So there was really no other way that, especially once we went down to 10 men, there was really no other way to get the ball up to the attackers. There was just this big hole, and whether it was nobody wanted to risk losing it, nobody wanted to risk being the guy that lost it or gave it away or was responsible for the ball going out of play, we then ended up in this pattern of just this doom loop of the ball being scuttled across the back, going back to the keeper, and inevitably being sent back down somehow.
Oh, well, back after a few technical difficulties. I promise that I didn't have to slip off and play right back there unwantingly. I think that it's very good points that you made there, though, Leslie. Just that there was a real sort of, just a feeling that it was very hard, particularly with the 10 men, very hard for us to sort of get anything going in terms of a creative sense and to sort of progress and move forward there. So yeah, just to sort of look in terms of more of a general viewpoint from Rovers, because I think there's definitely an undercurrent within the support. I don't think anyone can really shy away from it. There's obviously been a growing frustration among the fan base. Some of it directed towards the board, a lot of it directed to how the style of play that we've been playing and what's moving forward. A lot of maybe skepticism about certainly the decision firstly to get rid of Ian Murray and who we've replaced him with and the process for that. So I think it's a culmination of all these things. Callum, just to ask you firstly, and this is a question that sort of seems to have done the rounds, maybe more in both on forums and in terms of online and group chats, etc. Do you think there should maybe be more sort of scrutiny in terms of our recruitment that we've done in the summer from John Potter and what's happened? And because it feels like there's been sort of key areas, particularly the right back slot. Again, Kieran Freeman's came and played a few games, but he's not been able to get like really a strong run in the team. Do you think that that's an area that should have maybe been addressed, or are we maybe looking a bit more in terms of hindsight that now that we've played a few games and we've been having to make solutions for that, where we're sort of seeing it being more of a problematic issue?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually do believe there is right to criticise the recruitment, because the thing is, we've recruited well. Like, the players that we have brought in are good players, but we just have a minuscule squad. I think we've only got, maybe including Callum Hanna being out on loan, I think we've only got 22 players. And one of those is Jake Nicholson, who's a foundation player who, let's face it, he's going to be on the bench, just getting used to being in a professional environment. So if we don't count him, then 21, which is minuscule. And it's like Freeman was the only defender on the bench. And It's like most other teams, just about every other team has about 27 to 30 players. Now, we can talk about the quality of those players, but it means that those clubs have got depth in options. Like, they'll have at least 2 players in every position who have that position as their starting position. And it's like, we don't. It's like, we had this issue last season where we were playing Scott Brown as a centre-back when he's a midfielder. And we're doing the same again this season with Ross Matthews, where he's been centre-back at Ayr, he's been playing right-back. Lewis Gibson has been playing right wing-back. Stevenson's a left-back, but left wing-back. Although the first game at Ayr, he was at right-back or something, wasn't he? So it's just what is going on? It's like, surely it's just naff. It's like, you want to have, like, even if we brought in, so I know we've got the Community Foundation, and I know I've just said about Nicholson not expecting minutes, but it's like, surely we have someone in the Community Foundation or whatever who plays as a centre-back, who plays as a right-back, who plays as a left-back, wherever, who it's like, it's fine to have them on the bench, and if required, they can possibly do a job, even if it's like just a temporary fix. Even if it's a temporary fix for a game, I'm fine with that. But it's like, we just don't. We just keep on sticking people out of position.
Yeah, I think it's a situation where we're limited in terms of the information that we know. But Kieran Freeman obviously came on last week and did. I mean, I felt he did well. Everyone's going to be entitled very much to their own opinions. For me, I thought that he was quite aggressive in his play, and I was hoping that we would see him start. But then to go back to sort of having midfielders in defence, you're sort of asking the question, and I think it probably exacerbates the situation to a degree. Leslie, do you think that the lack of a right back in these games is sort of non-negotiable?
I think it is a huge problem. So let's think about this. We have known since February that we've needed a right back. Since whether it was February, whenever it was when the Ross Millen disappeared and was excommunicated, we've known since then that we've needed a right back. We had James Brown for a short period of time. We have brought in Kieran Freeman, and I'm going to be kind of optimistic, and I'm going to say the issue is simply that he's not quite 100% fit and they don't want to risk him. That's fair enough. However, even if you factor that in, we have got one defender who can actually play as a right back, and that whether that is a right back in a back four or playing on the right sort of wing back side in a more defensive capacity in a back three. I know Scott Fleming does not want a back three for the foreseeable future, but just hypothetically, that is a massive single point of failure. To have a single point of failure that is so big in a team that has designs on the playoffs is quite frankly unacceptable. And I know there will be reasons why it's happened, and I know that it's not like Football Manager. You don't just click a button and get players. There's all kinds of things going on, and anybody that any of us could have thought about, I'm sure John Potter and now Neil Collins, I'm sure they will have looked at everybody. They'll be looking at players. They'll be talking to players and their agents. It's not like they're sitting around waiting for us to tell them who our right back is. But it is an absolutely unacceptable situation for a team that has a desire of being up at the top end of the championship to find themselves in for whatever reason.
Yeah, 100%. I know that I think that if you sign players for the sake of signing them, you end up with James Brown, basically, because that was very much a sort of, we have a problem, here's a solution, and we get a player in that didn't really offer anything, if we're being brutally honest. And I know that the main one that sits there like a very ripe apple hanging from a tree is Kanayo Megwa at Hibs. Now, every team in this league wants to sign Kanayo Megwa. He's signed a new deal with Hibs. Nobody really knows as to sort of the ins and outs, whether he'd be available, whether he'd be able to come in. You've also got Liam Grimshaw there. But again, people, you suggest Liam Grimshaw, and then people will maybe say, okay, he was a weak link at Dundee United. I don't think that we need to be going for him. But then Liam Grimshaw was in turn the replacement for Kieran Freeman at Dundee United. So I feel like it's definitely, there's a remit to be able to sort of question what we've done in the summer. I think that the signings that we did make have all been very, very good, but like in general, I think that the likes of Montague, in particular Gibson, very enthusiastic about their sort of futures. I feel that they've got big opportunities ahead of them to be able to kick on. I think it's just a bit too soon for Montague to come into games like this, and now that the pressure's ramped up because we're bottom of the league, it's going to limit his game time. So maybe then again, you don't want to loan him out because that's losing another body. Callum Fordyce has been very, very unfortunate. I feel like we're missing Fordyce a lot because he's firstly a natural leader, and secondly, he offers us a lot as a centre half to be able to move forward. Hanlon and Stevenson. Hanlon's been exceptional so far. Very unfortunate with the goal. Took a huge deflection off him, but then he offers so much in terms of the quality. Stevenson's, unfortunately, the last game and a half, maybe, you could say that he's just not been at the very high standard that he's set already. And then again, you'll get questions for the likes of Lewis Jamieson, maybe doing a lot of high work, but what's the results of it? So I feel like it's very easy to sort of question the recruitment and to sort of look at it, but I don't feel like it's anyone's done anything particularly wrong. Me and Scott had a bit of a discussion about sort of, I was sort of saying, well, you've got to factor in the injuries, and he's saying there's only so much you can blame the injuries for. For me, I completely disagree with that. I think that we're missing, if you take the likes of Scott Brown, Sam Stanton, Fordyce, for me, those are huge players that you could come back in, and it does change how much if you can get the likes of Kieran Freeman back up to full fitness, you get a right back. Obviously, you want to sign others on top of that. I do feel like we need more of a physical presence maybe up top. But yeah, just for me, I feel nobody wants to be in the position that we're in. And I feel like the standard of the football's not really been good enough in terms of the chances that we're creating. But it's really up to the players and the manager to take responsibility of that and give fans a reason to show up every week and to really give us a reason to be enthusiastic. I mean, Carol, what are your thoughts in terms of where we're at, who we've signed, and sort of moving forward? Do you think it's an area for criticism, or?
To criticise, I'm going to sort of think out loud, is that obviously if we have a small squad, it's not just the match day that puts a lot of pressure on players. It means that players, when they're in training, they're having to be out of position that they train in to fill that position. They're having to do more training because you've got less players to swap in and out. So it's all these little things that are accumulating. And I think maybe a part of the factor on Friday night is you're going to be saying, don't anyone else get injured? So players are maybe going to be subconsciously a little bit more cautious going into a tackle, a little less sort of aggressive because they think, if I get injured, we are screwed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's that we need the depth of squad, like what Callum says. We've got a small squad, and maybe we need to sign a couple of players, not with them going to be good first team players, but they will help in training. They will let players rest. They will be able to be swapped in and out. Because I think we focus a lot on match day, but that's just a small factor of it. If you've got a tiny squad and you've got no right back, but you want to practice formations, it means every time someone's out of position. It's kind of like getting an understudy in and like saying to them, okay, here's the script, you've got 2 days, on you go. And you're like, but this isn't my part, I know nothing about this.
Yeah.
It's not going to be great. And everybody around is going to be kind of panicking, going, oh God, what if they make a mistake?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think we've done good signings. I just think we need a little bit more depth to cover all those things, not just on match day, but the whole week.
And I would say that results like Friday are going to they're going to be, it's like sticking a magnifying glass on it, and everyone sort of says after, if we won on Friday, nobody would be asking the question. Everyone would be saying, oh, in the squad we managed to kick on, and hopefully we can go on and beat Accies, and then we can put some real pressure on Falkirk. I don't think anyone goes into Friday thinking, oh, if we lose. I know that there was a degree of pressure there, but yeah, I'm maybe a bit less critical on that front than others, and I'm sure I'll get slaughtered for that opinion, no doubt. But that's fine. Everyone's alone to themselves in this sort of thing. Callum,
just be kind in the comments, people. That's all I ask. Be kind.
Nah, it's fine. Everyone's entitled to their viewpoint. We get slaughtered for being censored by the board, so it's again.
Yeah.
I think that you've got to accept that, and it works two ways. Anyone can have their viewpoint, and we're allowed to have our viewpoints as well. Callum, to turn to the board now, there's been a fair degree of criticism about the board, sort of just this. Do you think people are so? You look at stuff like, for instance, the social media work that we do. Graham Cogower and Andrew Barrowman did the sort of tour of the ground via Race TV on sort of inside Starks Park, which came out on Thursday. And then on Friday, you've got a bit of criticism there saying, yeah, this is fine that we're showing that our laundry room, for example, has been updated, but what's happening on the pitch? The games are poor. We're not creating chances. Do you think that's a fair criticism, or do you think it's maybe sort of people just using it as an opportunity to sort of criticise the club? Because even on our podcast, I noticed Scott was saying that. Scott was out on his Twitter, at Andrew Barrowman, sort of commenting on that to call him out on it. What were your thoughts on it, and just where are you at with these things?
I do. It's like with the board, it's like you have to split into like two sections. It's like you got on footballing matters and then everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like everything else wise. So it's like the stuff they've done to facility wise and like financially, all that sort of stuff. 10 out of 10, excellent job. Probably the best state the club has been in for decades.
Yeah.
But it's like on the pitch, the criticisms are absolutely valid. It's like, yes, things happen, but taking, 30 days or something like that to bring in a manager. Like, granted, we do supposedly have a setup where it's like you don't necessarily need a manager, but obviously it's like you do need a manager, but it's like it can survive without one for a prolonged period of time. It's just like obviously you want to get that. Yes, they want to get it right, and it's like they did come out and say Collins was the first person that we approached, but due to family issues couldn't come in at the time. But obviously he's come in, and then we have the whole David Healy situation where he was just being a wank. It's like you can't control those things. But it's like there are, of course, it's like this stuff where it's like not one. I understand where they're coming from in regards to the footballing side, where it comes like the style of play, because that's what was put out in the interview about when Mo got sacked and they were on the form and whatnot. So it's like the board do warrant criticism from that, but it's a sort of case of simmer down a little bit. We've got a long way to go, and I'm not just saying this because it's like I'm not paid by the board of directors or whatever. I've got £1.76 in my bank account right now. I would have if I had more than that, then I would be praising them. But no, it's just like
I'm looking
supporters'
forward to
frustration,
getting that
absolutely
clip by
right.
some Dunfermline fan who's going to be like, "Oh, all Rovers fans live in poverty below the breadline in Kirkcaldy." That's inevitably going to happen, Callum. Poor student. But
Yeah.
I think it's.
Andrew, give me the money.
I think it's a really valid point, and to be honest, look, a lot of the criticism that comes and goes, I think it's again circumstantial as to where we're at as a club, and obviously, again, nobody's going to deny, nobody's going to sit here and be like, yeah, the performances on the pitch are great. We just need to get behind the team. We can happy clap, etc., etc. Nobody's sitting there saying that. There's a lot that would be changed, and again, whether how that's done, everyone's going to have different opinions very much. For me, I think that we would see a big difference when we do have a fully fit squad, and not everyone will be at the same viewpoint as that. That's fair. One thing I would say, again, I think that I'm going to get slaughtered for this, but with regards to Andrew Barrowman, sure, the recruitment wasn't, the process for the recruitment wasn't great, but then you look at some of the people that we've had in charge before, and we look at some of the CEOs, he's light years ahead of them. Like, you're talking Eric Drysdale, Karen McCartney, give me a fucking break. Like, let's be completely honest. We had people that just were not football minded, they weren't minded in terms of their business savviness. For instance, Drysdale being on the board of the SFA and didn't, or SPFL, whatever it was at the time, and not knowing the rules about loanee goalkeepers. Like, think about where we've been before, and sure, that doesn't mean that they're not completely going to get off scot-free from criticism, but I think at the same time, I think there should be that video that was released by the club about the work about Starks Park. Sure, we're maybe not making the progress that we want off the pitch, on the pitch compared to where we're off the pitch, but I don't think that should be used to slaughter the club for what's happening off the pitch at the same time. I think that these don't have to necessarily be linear, and that I think that the focus should be completely, for me, on the footballing side, because that's where the improvement's got to make. If we win 2 or 3 games and then we rock up the table, the tune will very quickly change in the fan base. But yeah, Leslie, I just want to get your thoughts. What are your thoughts on things in terms of the board, where we're at, our social media, and how that's been handled, and just in general as to where we're going with the things direction wise?
It's a very difficult one, and I can't help but feel a bit conflicted. So I think it's not a zero-sum game. You don't either spend money on players or spend money on the infrastructure. They should be mutually reinforcing, and spending money on the where the players are working, where the technical staff are working during the week. All of that then feeds through to actually having a better product on the pitch. And we were chatting about that just before the Dunfermline game. It would be very hypocritical to just chuck all that out the window and say, how pleased we were to hear the CEO talking about being a Premiership club off the pitch before we are one on it. I absolutely wholeheartedly endorse that. It would be very easy. We've seen it a lot of times in the past. We've seen clubs like Gretna. And I mean, quite frankly, we've seen teams like Arbroath as well, who are quite happy to chuck all their money at the playing side of things and to hell with the rest of it. I think it's absolutely right. And I think I wholeheartedly agree we need to have that infrastructure in place, and that does not and should not come at the detriment of what we see on the pitch. But like I said at the top, like they say on Off the Ball, football fans are very fickle. That's just a fact. And you have got a very short period of time as a board when the on-the-field progress doesn't match to what's going off the pitch before people start getting jumpy. And we've scoffed at other teams as well. We scoffed at that statement that Dunfermline put out a few weeks ago about, their fans were getting angry that there wasn't enough progress in the pitch compared to what was going on. We've laughed at Darvel and their USB ports in Queen's Park with their laser level pitch as well. When you get that mismatch, fans are very quick to jump on that. What I think has made things challenging, though, really challenging is that we actually probably overachieved last season. And I'm not saying it was a fluke. I'm not saying we didn't deserve it, but it has raised expectations very high. And you can't come out to fans and say, yeah, that was really good, but to be honest, we're probably aiming for 3rd or 4th this season. We want to have the infrastructure in place, and at some point we have a pitch. Because everybody thinks, okay, we finished last season. The logical extension of that is that we have to win the league this year. It's very hard to get that message out that actually this is not a moonshot. We're not looking at a single season, but that is a very hard message to package to fans.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think that, I don't think that anyone was under any illusions. And the message at the start of the season, from whether it was Ian Murray, whether it was the board, whether it was fans on here, whether you look at any sort of predictions, Raith Rovers were a team that people were sort of saying, if not first, second, along with Partick Thistle. That was generally the lay of the land. You had maybe teams like Ayr, Falkirk coming up with a bit of momentum. Livingston as well. You were sort of looking about that area. And I think that with good reason, people are sort of saying, how have we started so badly in terms of this league campaign? We've had more red cards than we've scored goals, let alone goals from open play, just goals in general. So it's been a thoroughly depressing start to the season. But I think it's about, as a club, it's about how do we turn that round and get that confidence back. And again, it's I think there's a degree of trying not to lose the head with it, because at moments like this, people become very, very reactionary. They become very trigger happy. They become very, I'll tweet things out or I'll talk things through. And I think it's about having that degree of sanity to try and see it, even though things are going terribly, terribly badly on the pitch. And people are well within their rights to be critical. I think it's just about figuring it out. And I think that the way that things have been processed haven't been great. For me, I think it's a tough one to take, because you look at the league and it feels hugely like a missed opportunity at the moment, that we've started so poorly, that we've seen rash decisions, that we've seen so many red cards, mistakes, that there's clear sort of deficiencies in terms of maybe the squad that you would hope, like we don't have. We've maybe sort of not seen a sort of physical forward, that we've maybe looked a bit diminutive in terms of coming up against other teams where we've maybe been bodied about. Just interested to see how it picks up. Carol, just going forward, what do you think the next steps are? Just as to sort of how we progress, do you think that we're sort of maybe needing quite a lot of surgery in terms of the squad? Do you think it's about picking up the confidence? What's your sort of message? I know that it's usually calm down. Are we going to see that again, or?
No, so in a lot of the companies I work in, there's a new trend at the moment to hire a happiness manager. Don't ask me what they do. I have no idea what they do.
Starks Park.
Right, okay, but a happiness manager. And it's usually a human resources position, and I don't know what the human resources set up is at Starks Park. I don't even know if there is one, to be honest. But yeah, there needs to be that, not just keep calm, but keep calm and be happy.
Yeah.
Yes, the performance on Friday was appalling, and I am not defending anyone in any way. But from a business point of view, the amateur behind the scenes that was Starks Park a couple of years ago to the professionalism that it is now, the difference is huge. It's just from some of the stuff that interacting with the club, just like the program, organising things like International Women's Day. Beforehand, it was very much, I don't want to say it like amateur in a bad way, but just in that it was, we'll stick it together and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
There's no hot water in the showers, but it's okay, we'll boil the kettle. And like people are focusing on, oh great, we have a fantastic laundry room and a terrible team on the pitch. But what Andrew Barrowman said in that interview was quite interesting. He wants to make people's workplace easier. They can get their kit out of the bus, they can get straight into the laundry room and it's dealt. It's not someone breaking their back carrying it up the stairs. And those things, they don't have monetary value, but you can like say to a player or to a new backroom staff, okay, we might not be able to offer you all the money in the world, but you've got a great place to work. You want to come into work and you will enjoy it. And obviously as fans, we don't have that experience. We go to the games and if the game's shit, we feel shit.
Yeah.
And I think if we go into the game jumping forward, if we go into the game against Hamilton and everyone's like, sack the board, it's all over, it's going to happen. It's going to bring the players down. You kind of have to go, right, we need to be that 12th man and just be a little bit more, not happy clapping, but keep calm. Don't get so frustrated quickly.
Yeah.
And think about the bigger picture. I don't think anyone wants us, I don't think we want a laundry room of a Premiership club being in the First Division. You can't win or lose a league by Christmas, but you can make your football going to the game miserable experience if you go in with it. This is shit, the board is shit. I want them to forget doing stuff behind the scenes and I want all these players on the pitch because that's just not going to happen.
Yeah. I'll stop you there. I think it's very much a two-way street. That there was a growing frustration, shall we say, in the stand. I've noticed it in the last couple of games where we would get the ball and maybe it's a throw-in, sort of two-thirds of the way through the opponent's half. So you're sort of looking towards the edge of their box, and the ball will get thrown back at the throw, and then it gets passed back to the full-back, and then passed back to the centre-back and back to Kev. And you can hear the audible groans from people. I think that there needs to be, firstly, I would love to sort of have a penny of the thoughts of the players in terms of like where they're at the moment, because you would love for them just to have the confidence just to be able to kick on and to be able to move forward with it. But then at the same time, you also have to have that sort of rocket up the arse as well. You need to sort of have because the criticism is valid that we've been very shot shy, we've been sort of lacking in confidence, not been maybe, like for instance, rather than firing in a cross, you're looking for another pass, etc. Again, I think that's the easy point of view from the fan, is to sort of criticise and say those points of views. Again, we're not professional footballers. Nobody else other than the players on the pitch. And I think it's probably quite easy to look at it from that standpoint. But also as well, at the same time, they shouldn't be given an easy ride. It's just about, really interested to see what the reaction is against the Hamilton game. And I would love it if we went out full guns blazing and could do some damage. But whether that happens or not is a different question. So Callum, where are you at with that sort of mindset? Where are you sort of in terms of how we move forward, and what are your thoughts in general?
It's very much as a case of we're in a bit of a rut. We've got these injuries. Players should be starting to come back now, hopefully. But even if that's not the case, the large core of these players got us to second last season. And we can talk about overachieving, which is probable, looking at how things went, but they got there, and it's like the players said a lot of it did come down to the support that we gave last season. You know, it's like we were constantly behind them. It's like even games again. It was like the 3-2 loss against Inverness, where I think it was like we were 3-1 down going into half time, but it's like we still had that belief that we could come back, and it's pretty much just what It does help. It's a psychological thing, but it's like if you know that you've got the backing of all those people, it's like if someone believes in you, you believe in yourself, that sort of thing. So I just back the players, just back them, because they gave us really, really good times last season. We're in a bit of a rut. They've got the credit in the bank. Have players come back, and just hopefully we should start going back up the table again. Because it's not exactly going to get worse from here, is it? I mean, can't get worse than bottom of the table.
We turned into Brecon that season. It just didn't win any games. That's
We've won a game. We've won a game.
Well, that's true. That's true. So we can't do worse than that. So
it can be worse.
It can be worse, Callum. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Question: what would we take with Hamilton? Would we take coming out all guns blazing, firing everything but still losing, or would we take a really, really crappy goal to win it?
Crappy goal to win it.
I take the win. I take the win. Exactly. Seriously,
just pick up points.
No, I mean that's it. I think that's all it needs. Is it just needs a ball going off someone's arse or something like that, and that might just be enough to get people moving. That might be all it needs. And while I've got airtime, the one thing I do just want to say as well is that I think this is where Paul Hanlon and Lewis Stevenson on the training ground could be really, really vital. Because people are saying, what are Hanlon and Stevenson thinking about coming into this? They've come from Hibs. Hibs is like the Rovers on steroids. In terms of banter stuff going on and bin fires and madness, like Hibs is like the Rovers turned up to 11. So they've seen all of this before. They've been in teams that have got into Europe. They've been in teams that have been relegated. They've been in teams that have won cups. They've been in teams that have gone 10, 15 games without a win. They have seen all of this. Now, I'm sure they are, because they're fantastic guys. But, just having those guys with that experience to just keep everybody on an even keel, I'd like to think that could be what helps us to get out of this.
I'm going to be, I'll be keeping an ear for Long Bangers, the Hibs podcast that my mate Matty hosts, and seeing if they're talking about Raith Rovers being Hibs on steroids, or whatever that's the other way about Leslie. I just, you just want to get back to winning ways in this sort of situation. It's very hard to sort of say how much of it's circumstantial. I guess time will tell when we get players back who's going to be right with this. And you're never going to have a full squad. There's always players in nursing injuries, but it just feels like at the moment things just seem to be following more against Rovers than they are for them at the moment. And you just hope to see a turn in that trend because it could be, really, really difficult.
See, I made this point on the Challenge Cup roundup that I did with Salmon's Pizzeria, where I said it's teams who are having a difficult time, and it's like at our level, and it's like with the Challenge Cup, there's a very good chance you're going to be facing someone in the leagues below you, and it's just a case of like getting in a good performance, a good win, and that can be like a kickstart. And we got absolutely shafted by getting Ayr away in the draw, who were like flying away. It's like if we got given like Bonnyrigg or whatever, and Dunfermline were given Ayr, it's like psychologically it could be different. We could be like, okay, we know what we're doing, but it's like that didn't seem to be the case. It's like Dunfermline got a win. They seem to. It's like they won 2-0. They seem to have got that belief in again, and that's why we were saying about just taking a crappy 1-0 win against Accies, because it does just take that one win that can change it.
I mean, Callum, if you look at our last few games, just I feel like that is personally a valid point. So we lose against Dunfermline. We've got 10 men, poor performance, but you're playing the majority of the game with 10 men. It's not really. I mean, there is a degree of an excuse there, but it's sort of a continuation of a trend. So, Challenge Cup, we lose to Ayr 3-2. Again, the penalty that we go against us is questionable, and then we lose sort of really 2 sloppy goals on the back of it. Livingston, we don't get a penalty, but then you look at the goal that they've scored where Kev Dabrowski really should do better with it. You've got Ayr away again, where we lose 2-0, red card. Where Sean Byrne gets sent off again, very difficult place to go. Before that, we've beat Partick Thistle, and then we've lost to Airdrie on the opening day, where we finished the game with 10 men. It's just a really horrific run in terms of you look at every single game, there's sort of a caveat to it, where you can sort of say, well, like what's going on? But then at the same time, we've still only scored, one goal that's been a penalty. So I think there's definitely reasons from criticism. I don't think anyone's going to shy away from that. But also at the same time, there's been a lot that's gone against us. I'm not saying it's some Celtic fan conspiracy. I'll probably get the podcast slaughtered for that. But there's no sort of conspiracy. It's just been a really unfortunate run of luck that we've had as well at the same time. Likes of stuff like Fordyce getting injured on the opening day, going in for a 50-50 with Frizzell. It's just these things happen in football, and when your luck's out. So we will no doubt be back towards the end of the week with a preview for the Hamilton game. Actually, one final point that Leslie sort of touched on, there was again return of the sort of unsavoury chanting that was sort of during the game at different points, just with regards to a player that, to be honest, a lot of the group that were singing it, they looked a lot younger than when he was alive. I just didn't get it, why it keeps coming back. Again, I'd love to say it was each to their own, but it's just a bit daft. Like, I don't get why people keep singing about it. But again, we're obviously we're all united on that one. And just, it's not for us. It just seems a bit bizarre. Not sure why that's came to the fore over the last few games, but disappointing because the atmosphere down the front looked fucking great. It looked brilliant throughout the game. It's just ruined by one chant. And I thought that the Rovers support in general was really good on Friday. Just a lot of noise coming out that away end. Just marred by that one instant that I think that you do need to keep calling it out. And Leslie, you were saying that was a guy near you. What was it? It was he was the one that sort of.
So we didn't. Aye. So my wife was sitting next to me. Her man of the match was nobody on the pitch, but it was the guy that had stood up and shut it down. And the guy just turns around and says to whoever it was behind us, and we didn't sing that. That's a horrible chant. I don't care. He says, I don't care. We didn't sing that. And fair play to you for shutting it down.
Aye, that's fucking nonsense. But again, it's not that they're going to listen. It's going to try to keep it current, unfortunately. But again, you've got to sort of mention it. Each to their own, and just hopefully it'll disappear because it's fucking pointless. Other than that, we'll be back more positive note, we'll be hopefully back for the Accies game later on in the week. Has anyone got any closing thoughts, or are we just glad to close this chapter in what's been a horrific weekend for the good guys of Scottish football?
John
Just
Byrne,
close
it's
it.
okay to score. If you want to do it against Hamilton in a fluke goal, it's okay to score. I think if you do that, we will love you for the long time.
Callum will be on the pitch and give you a hug if that happens. Probably scream "Yas" in your
Yep.
face and burst an eardrum like he did with the Rafe TV cameras.
Probably.
Guilty as sin. Right, we'll leave that for now. Thank you for tuning in. As ever, you can find us on the social media. Feel free to flood the YouTube comments telling us that we're happy clappers. We don't really care. We've got on top of that, Carol runs the Instagram. We've got Blair, who manages the Etsy shop. We will no doubt be back with the predictions, of course. Blair will probably provide an update table for that at some point going ahead this week to see how far Duncan's dad has raced ahead of us all, other than Marillion, who seems to be going really, really strong at the top of that. But yeah, thanks for listening and bye for now.